Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Kirkwood Minerals Public Utility District. Ask Peter to do the roll call.
Sure. Epstein,
Present.
Schroeder, here. Mitchell, here. Burrow, absent. Norberg here.
Okay, and announcements.
I'd just like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled meeting of the KMPUD board. If you have any questions on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function.
Okay, and now we have the seating of new board members.
So Brittany should be coming in. I hear her.
Or member. So,
Hold on. Do you want me to come in there or am I okay over here?
You could be just fine there. If
Okay,
you
thank
get from
you.
there, that's fine.
I'm on.
You're seeing the board members like right now?
I know. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize you needed.
It's okay. Hi, guys. So the KMPUD board election was held on November 7th, 2023 for the purpose of electing director seat 1 and 2 for the full 4 terms. Doug Minter-Toronto was appointed director seat 2 and for a second 4-year term, and Chris Tucher was appointed to director seat 1 for his first 4-year term. The terms commenced on December 1st at noon and end on December 3rd. Their first board meeting taking place December 8th, and oaths of office were administered to both the directors in November and already submitted to Alpine County. Do I need to do anything else, or is that good?
we ask Chris to please join us, and congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brittany.
You're welcome.
Tipping the chair over.
Okay.
They're a little tippy.
Yeah, that doesn't look good.
Oops. I'll bring a cockeyed approach to the board, I suppose.
Will you be more comfortable in a metal chair?
I'll try this for new.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay.
because some of them are
if not, we'll get you
Pretty
something
funny.
else. All right. We'll put that on the list of things to fix. Okay, are there any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar that anyone wants to bring forward? Okay, I'll do that silence as no. So next we have comments from the audience, an opportunity for members of the audience to bring up non-agenda items.
You go first. Howard, go ahead.
Okay, Howard Hoffman, 34101 Darrow. We had an election. Election fairness has been a really hot topic in the United States for a number of years. And we've all heard of stuffing the ballot box. Then there's stuffing the ballot rolls. If somebody wants to register to vote in another state and register to live there, but then wants to use their Kirkwood address to have your adult children use that address to gain votes at Kirkwood, is that really what this community wants? Is that really right? Is that fair? Is that a fair election? And for that matter, anybody who chooses to have other family members register to vote at Kirkwood and then yo-yo back out. I mean, if people are committed here, maybe they don't spend full time here, but they want this to be where they vote. Fine. But I think everybody needs to ask themselves the appropriateness of having people do yo-yo voting registration. And I've heard of this being an issue in other communities in the United States. And I just think that each board member and everybody else in the room, and anybody else hearing this, ought to think about whether that's appropriate or not. Thank you.
Can I
Thank you.
make a comment?
Sure.
We did challenge it in 2008 after that election because similar things occurred, and the state election board said we were too small. It didn't matter. They wouldn't investigate it. So it's basically the state needs to be addressed at the state level, because I know people have raised the same issue. We raised it in 2008, and that was resolved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sandy.
Yeah, just briefly in response to something Howard said. I had seen the voter rolls and I was concerned that the Trevettes who moved to Nevada 6 years ago, I believe, and sold their house, and they had 4 people, a mother and a father and 2 children, are still registered to vote in Amador County. And that was distressing to me. And I actually called the county clerk in Alpine County and she said she was gonna investigate that. But the only way she could investigate it was to contact Amador County clerk. But you knew the Trevettes when they lived here. And so if you happen to know how to contact them, I think it would be prudent and helpful if you told them to take their names off the voter, 4 people off the voter registration and end of their term.
If I could just answer, just
Oh.
address me. My daughter, who lives in Washington State, no longer votes in California. I kept notifying the Amador County clerk in writing, in emails, any way I could, that my daughter is registered to vote in a different state and she should be removed from the rolls. The Amador County clerk is not very efficient
Okay.
at removing
You know.
people. And I mean, they should have some way of automatically doing it or making it easy for people to unregister. And I've been very frustrated by Amador County
Yeah.
myself.
I mean, it's very possible that they didn't vote, but when I saw their names.
Okay, did you have something else?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
that was just a minor thing.
all right.
So, I just want to, first of all, congratulations to Doug and Chris. I'm Sandy Sloan. I think that, most of you know that I'm one of 5 people that worked for over a year to put out the book Kirkwood Stories, the first 50 years. And by the way, we donated all the proceeds from the sale of that book, which was $17,500 to the Kirkwood Fire District, and no one ever received a thank you for that. But in the process of putting that book together, the 5 of us interviewed over 70 people, which was including really old timers like Peter and new timers like Doug. And what we heard over and over and over again was that people love Kirkwood because of the sense of community. And even though Kirkwood was isolated and had many struggles, especially in the early years, that people loved it because of this great sense of community. And the PUD had a lot to do with that. The resort had a lot to do with it too, but as we all know, since the resort was sold to Vail, we don't have much attention from them. So like it or not, in my opinion, the PUD is the center of our community. It is our city hall in a way. And what people want here, I just want to ask you to hear what people wanted. People want a community here. We want communication in a timely newsletter. We want a communications committee that communicates in a timely manner. We want other committees that recruit community members and get them involved and actually have these committees meet. We want a building that we can enter when we have a question. We want someone to answer the phone when we call. We want social events like a summer barbecue, a Labor Day race, a holiday party where community members and ex-board members and the staff can meet. We want a board that cares about the entire community, a board where members don't attack each other personally and are respectful of each other and don't divide the community by caring more about one homeowners association more than the whole community. I personally, along with many people I know, don't know much about electricity or gas or water or even fire. But what I do know is that we want a sense of community and we want that sense of community back. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Wow.
I think Ricky also wanted to be able to say something. So I want to introduce Ricky Newberry, who's the new general manager at Vail. And I asked him to just introduce himself during this time period. So Ricky, the floor is yours.
All right. Let's see if we can get my screen to work. Rather than just my name, I've got a camera here. Stand by a second.
Okay.
It may not work because of webinars, Ricky.
Oh, right.
Okay. All right. Got it. Well, I can.
We're doing
I can
this
see
as a
all of you.
webinar, not as a Zoom. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Ricky Newberry. I'm the new general manager for Kirkwood Mountain Resort. And I'm not new to the Kirkwood Valley, so a lot of familiar names and faces. I started here as a frontline ski patroller back in 1999. I actually ended up here because my wife, Maggie, got a job teaching through Alpine County Unified School District in Sun Meadows, down in the basement there, Sun Meadows, in the school that Gene Reuter started way back when. So yeah, 24 years in the ski business. I've done a couple different roles and a couple different seasons at Heavenly, but by and large have spent the majority of my career here at Kirkwood. I love the place. I was married here. My two daughters, Indy and Avalon, have grown up skiing here since they could walk. So yeah, just appreciate the time to make the introduction. Really excited to be back. Congratulations to Chris and Doug on their new roles. Existing board members, look forward to connecting with you more and more and getting to know each other. And I think to some of the earlier comments, May, just recognizing the awesomeness of this Kirkwood community and partnering and working together and looking forward to doing good things. So thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any other?
Question?
Thanks.
Ricky, hi, it's Chris. Do you live in, yeah, I assume you are in Kirkwood most of the time. Do you live in Valley, or how much time do you spend in Kirkwood? Maybe that's a dumb question, all of it.
Good question. I spent a lot of time in the Valley, but my primary residence is in Christmas Valley in Myers, so about 24 miles away, which can feel pretty close, and it can also feel very distant when the pass is closed. So yeah, I'll be here a lot. You can trust that. Good question.
Last question, any changes in the leadership, management of like mountain ops or base, I don't know what it's called, Valley ops?
Yeah,
For
really
example.
good question. So yeah, base operations director is still Greg Kiskinen. And then his number two, his right hand, is Dan Deemer, who I'm sure a lot of you know. He's always out on Kirkwood Meadows Drive, parking when we see traffic. And then in mountain operations, we have a new mountain operations director, Adam Eichmeyer, who many of you may know. Adam and I actually started on the patrol in 1999 together, and he assumed the mountain ops role about a month or two prior to me coming in. So yeah, mountain ops is Adam, base ops is Greg. All the other senior leaders are the same: Justin in skier services, Maggie in health and safety, and then Steve Kramer in food and beverage. So yeah, it's a good crew, connecting with them, know most of them pretty well, and just looking forward to getting the season kicked off. So yeah, pretty quick for me onboarding, and then opening last Friday. And then with this little bit of natural snowfall, we will be expanding some lifts and terrain, hopefully over the weekend, and then more beyond that.
Okay, thanks. The next item is written comments from the public, and we had three: for Adam Peterson, Larry Parker, and Peter Christ.
Those were on item 11. Those were not
Yeah, and
generic
I was
comments.
about to say
Gotcha.
that we will cover those on item 11. Thank you. So it's now, I'd like a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Motion to adopt. I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. All right,
Unanimous.
that's done. Okay, so we're now ready for item 10. All right, so this is a little bit awkward, but the first thing we have to do is elect a new president. So does someone want to make a nomination?
Yeah, I'd nominate Bob for another term. I'm eager to second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? I guess we have to deal with this one first. All right, I'd be very happy to do it again.
Oh, wow, good.
Should I say all in
Yeah.
favor?
We have a discussion or no?
We can have a discussion, yes.
Can I ask, thank you for willingness to serve again. What do you think would be different in the next 2 years that you think about from the last 2 years? Or what are things that you would, I don't know, just kind of curious, like,
Well,
I think I asked you 2 years ago, like, what
Yeah.
would your vision be? And so I'm asking you the same question again, like, what do you think your vision for the next 2 years would be? And what would be potentially different, if anything?
I think a couple of things. First of all, 2 years from now, I'd like Sandy to come and say how much more of a community we have than 2 years ago. So if that was accomplished, I would feel very good about it. So I think that's the starting point, and having discussions, but leading to conclusions respectfully and being able to move forward. I think operationally, having snow removal, just being spectacularly good, is one effort. Having a robust fire service properly funded, wherever that leads, but having that resolved and operating. So I think that's a big item, making progress on the wastewater treatment plant and being able to come up with ways of reducing our propane demand. So we reduce the risk of ever coming close to running out again. I think if we did all those things in the next 2 years, I feel just great, and we can over accomplish too. I will not hold anybody back from doing that.
It's a great list.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we call for a vote. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I made an assumption that this might happen. So based on that, we asked everybody to, I'll hand these out because they might be hard to read. This is the same sheet as up on the screen. I took everybody's, Eric asked everybody to list which committees they were most interested in, listing from 1 to 4. I should comment that personnel by bylaws is the president and vice president.
You should go with election of officers first, Bob, agenda wise, 10B,
Yeah,
before we go to committees.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So putting all of that together, some officers are linked to the committees that they might be on. So looking at all of this at the same time, the proposed slate of officers assumes treasurer, assumes that John is serving on finance committee to make that fit together. Peter has been the secretary. I can't imagine
For a long time.
for a long time. One of the
I used to
reasons
type
is
the
because
minutes
his
up
signature is
randomly.
almost always invalid when we need it. Assistant secretary is kind of the starting point. You can only go up from there, Chris. And then that leaves the vice president. So that was the rationale behind the slate of officers. Is there any discussion on that? Does someone want to propose a modification, or are we ready to elect?
It works for me. I'll move to approve that assignment.
Okay,
Yeah, you want a motion in a second or?
yeah, motion a second.
Was that a
So
motion?
Peter just
Yeah,
motioned.
well, second.
Okay. All right. Call for a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. So we're now ready to look at the committee assignments. So again, by definition, personnel is the president and vice president. LAFCO is also by appointment, although I'm happy to yield to somebody else and maybe ask Terry at some point whether there'll be another LAFCO meeting. It's not the highest priority, and Teola has had a lot to deal with. Yeah, all right. But in any case, when we need it, we would be available. So that would leave communications, and so the proposal based on people's preferences, trying to bounce them out would be Doug and Chris on communications, John and myself on finance, Peter and John on operations, then Chris and Peter on planning, and then that would be the four. But this is a discussion, not an edict. So if anyone has any suggestions or they're happy with it.
Are these to be finalized, decided right now?
Yeah, I mean,
Today?
you can change them in the future, but this is, yeah. That would be the intent, is to have this as the starting point.
I'll take the positions you assign. I don't have a clear enough idea on planning, although I've discussed it with some of you already to know what that means, but I'll trust your direction.
Okay, so let me say also that I would ask each committee chair as their first assignment in their first meeting to review the charter. And Eric will distribute those and say, is the charter still appropriate? Should you make any changes? And that should probably be one of the first priorities of a meeting, is to look at that. And I think that would give you a chance and then to discuss with staff and say, what's the most productive use of planning, and come back with your ideas.
Okay.
Where do we have the committee members documented? So Chris would know who is on planning from
I've seen that in the minutes.
do you have it? Okay.
Yeah, are they on the website also?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So
Can I
we
ask a
would,
question just in terms of transitions?
Yeah.
From a Brown Act perspective, are we allowed to communicate, like if I were, since I would be the past chair of planning, am I allowed to talk to Chris about, just experiences and, things like that to help the transition? And likewise, if I were to take on communications, is that allowed via Brown Act to have that sort of conversation?
Want me to answer that?
The short answer is no, I think.
Sandy, yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You can talk to one person. Two board members can always talk to each other.
But given the context that another board member had been at a meeting, if I were to say,
No, because the next time they meet, they'll be at a public meeting.
That's okay.
okay, so that's okay. So I'm just
As
saying.
long as you don't talk to Peter and Chris about it,
Right.
and as long as Chris doesn't talk to Peter about it, outside of the meeting, you're golden.
Okay, and then the other thing we'd look to do is at the next board meeting, or as soon as we have the charters re-examined, then we would have a group meeting in public forum to talk about that.
You have a comment, we should talk a little bit about the frequency of meetings. So I've had finance for a couple of years, and finance has to meet every month, so there's no option there. But for the other committees, like personnel, you probably meet 10 times a year at least. And so there'd just be a couple months where there was nothing to really look at. But I think we ought to have some expectation that there's some frequency of, getting the committees together. Minimal, 6 or 8 a year or something like that.
I think that's right.
I mean, and for planning, I tried to meet every month if there was an agenda, and I would, if I took on communications, to the earlier comment, I would very much like to meet every month. I know.
Yeah, that's gonna be a 12 meeting one.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think the logical thing is to assume every month and to cancel when there isn't sufficient agenda items. Or, in the summer when it's slow, et cetera. Are there other discussions on this? Okay, is there a motion to advance the committee assignments?
It might be interesting to talk about written reports too, just because
Well, I gotta set the standard.
Doug set the standard, but for finance, the reports end up being redundant with there's almost a resolution. There's a resolution or something, a recommendation coming out of finance every month, right? So whatever we're working on, like today, it's the electric rate issue. So it'd be kind of redundant in finance for most of the part to have a second report. But I don't think that's the case with some of the other committees. So
Redundant with the board package?
no, a report, if I wrote up a report, it'd be redundant with something else that we've already submitted.
Okay,
Finance, I would say almost every month you got something that comes up,
sure.
or 2 or 3 things that come up, and they end up being recommendations in the board package. So I work on those with Eric, and then to write those over again seems redundant is what I meant.
Right.
As a separate board.
I fully intend on keeping with my written reports for the communications committee. I found them to be extremely helpful for just me. If no one else, I feel like they're really helpful for me, and hopefully, and I would always send them to so my standard operating procedure was have the meeting. I take notes, I put them into a document, and then I send them to the members of the committee to give them a chance to give any feedback or clarifications to make sure I didn't misstate anything. And then that's what I submit to the board packet. So the intent is that there would be no conversation from the committee at the board meeting because that way everyone's had a chance to look at similar to our minutes, so that I think that's helpful for me, and I think it's helped me many times to go back in time to remember conversation points, and so I think it's a good practice if we.
I read the reports.
Yeah.
Plus, not having a report from communications is kind of an oxymoron, doesn't it?
I
I
Yeah.
think that's what I think it's been really effective, and I would encourage.
Why don't we ask
Board to
everybody
do
to
it.
think about
To
that
think
as a
about that.
standard? I do remember when Michael Sharp, when we had to do a reduction, before that, we had minutes from all the committee members. And without that, it's kind of gradually dependent on oral history, which isn't nearly as good. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea. All right, and we'll continue this at the next board meeting discussion.
Sounds good.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the committee assignments as documented?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second that.
second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. And then the other one on here, which is appointed by president, is Peter is going to serve on the technical advisory committee on fire, and Doug's going to continue. So I assume you probably already met.
We did.
Okay, so we'll hear about that at the appropriate point.
Yep.
Okay, so that takes care of item 10C. We're ready for 10D, and then hopefully we'll be pretty close to the 2:30 start.
I think it'll be close.
Okay, so item 10D is a document that's not going to be too easy to read for people who have to read it on screen. But Eric and I think a few other people have provided, I think John, others have provided some feedback of just documenting the Roberts Rules of Order, which is what the board has adopted in the past to use
Right. Protocol.
as a standard. So I would,
And just for a little more background, this was lifted from the Aqua JPIA conference from a presentation during that conference that was recommended by an attorney that was presenting.
do you want to
protocols for
elaborate
board
a little
meetings.
bit more on that?
Yeah,
in
it
that
was just, it was a meeting on how, it was a seminar on how meetings should be run. I think Rick also attended it, on how meetings should be run. And this was basically, they went through this slide by slide, and this was the best I could glean after looking at a bunch of them. So I completely plagiarized it and sent it out to the board to review, and it was positive. So you asked that it be put on the agenda. So here it is.
I don't know if anyone had a chance to review it or had any comments.
Yeah, I've had some experience with the 3-minute rule,
Mm-hmm.
and it's at one point in time when we were rebuilding the powerhouse and we'd have 50 people come to a meeting, and we actually had a timer and an alarm, and it was very demoralizing for everyone.
I remember that alarm going off on me.
So I'm not real crazy about reapproving that the 3-minute time limit, especially given the nature that we don't usually have a lot of people at our meetings. And I think it's important to get as much input as we can from this community because it's a second homeowner community. And so I'm not real crazy about adopting that 3-minute limitation.
Okay,
The 3 minutes is for speaker, but not for board member. Is that true?
that's correct.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think people came away with the impression that they were being muzzled. I don't know. I mean, Eric, I'm sure you remember those meetings when we had the timer.
Never invoking that very often.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think there's the balance between we need to be able to operate and have, I think, rules that say that the president of the board can put a gavel down and stop someone if they go on for 15 minutes on a
Right.
non-germane topic.
Right.
I think the intent is, I mean, I don't want to ever give the impression of what you're saying, right? Where we don't want people to be able to be heard.
Right.
So I think there is a balance here between, we have to be able to function and be able to make decisions and have our, as elected officials, conversations and have our votes. But I think it's really important to be able to have a community and be able to have that community give feedback, and we hear it and we listen to it. So I think there is a balancing act here. And I don't know if it has to be 3 is the right number or whatever else, but I think that's.
Yeah, well, let me just, this is item 3, and the specific wording is comments should be limited 3 minutes per speaker unless otherwise noted by the chair.
Okay.
So
So
I
it's
think
up to
the
the
idea
chairman
is
or-
this is the maximum when there's a lot of people. If there's a smaller number of people, and
Right.
then the chair has the discretion.
Okay.
I think it does
Tim?
formalize. I think we're slightly more informal in some of the other later bullets about, it's very binary in terms of there is a public comment period and then there's a board discussion period and a vote.
Mhm.
And I think we have, at least my 2 years, we've been more informal in that, where people can give comment, we'll discuss, and then other people can come in. And I think there's still flexibility for that at some level.
I think the difference is whether it's a public hearing or just a board topic.
Interesting.
So in a public hearing, we would follow the procedure, like what we'll have later coming up.
I see.
So let me take comments from the audience. Eric?
Just a suggestion to address Peter. That could be flipped, say something like. The comment may be limited 3 minutes necessary to give all members of the audience a chance to speak. In other words, the norm would be not. But it could be invoked, rather than the norm as it is, it can be reverse it.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that. I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Does that, Doug?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, so it would be
Yeah, I
when
think the intent-
necessary, the chair
That
has,
should be
yeah,
welcoming. And
okay. So when necessary, the chair would have the option to limit to 3 minutes in order to,
Make clear, it's not to quiet people down, it's to give everybody a chance to speak.
right. Okay. That's good feedback. All right, any other comments on this? We'll make that one change, and otherwise this will be our default, and
Probably should have a motion to,
yeah, so we have a motion to approve this with item 3 amended. Yes,
so moved.
okay. Moved by Doug, second. Chris, this is your big
Second.
chance. There you
I
go.
seconded the Robin's report.
Okay, there you go. All right, there we go. Historic day. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. So we are now ready to move on to the public hearing.
yes.
Is Zoom not been turned on for the public yet? Is that how it works?
Oh, it's been on.
No, it's been on the whole time.
I see.
It's just, we tried to target it so it would be ready at around 2:30.
Oh, that's-
So some people are joining now.
Okay. So in keeping with the newly adopted protocols in order, start with the staff report.
Yes. And Brandy, do you want to join us? Or,
So for the years of 2015 to 2017, the district hedged or pre-purchased a portion of our electric load, 80% on peak, 50% off peak. A cost comparison was done at the end of that time, and it was determined that day ahead pricing would have been better for us over that period, as it had been relatively stable across all that time. And so it was, again, relatively stable. And then we adopted that stability into the rate study in 2021. I'm using a price of 22 cents per kilowatt hour, of which 6.5 cents was the cost of goods sold for the electric rates. And then due to last winter, nationwide, there were huge fluctuations. We paid 32 cents per kilowatt hour in December instead of the budget of 6.5 cents, resulting in over $500,000 in losses. This meant in order to meet our loan covenants with USDA, we had to use more property tax, almost twice as much as what we'd originally anticipated. And it would have been more than that if we had not received forgiveness from USDA on one of our tier ratios. So once we had the full impact at the end of the fiscal year, the board directed staff to begin investigating this. We held numerous meetings, explored a lot of options, including going with the propane type model, retroactive 1 month, going with hedge pricing, or increasing the base rate. At the November meeting, the board unanimously voted to notice a rate hearing and get updated Shell hedge pricing, and to amend the ordinance, or prepare an amendment to the ordinance for the electric rates. So we did find out that Shell pricing is good for exactly 30 minutes. And if the board decides to proceed today, we will receive it at 10 a.m. on Monday, and I have to sign it by 10:30 a.m. on Monday. So the impact of this is obviously significant reduction of our exposure to losses for cost of goods sold for those sorts of fluctuations, and the ability to apply property taxes as was originally contemplated in the water and wastewater study, which included property tax allocations to reduce the loan amount from USDA for the wastewater treatment plant and other improvements in water. So this item is exempt from CEQA, and we request that the board authorize staff based on the pricing from Shell, which we received pricing today. So hopefully it'll be very close to Monday, but we'll tell you what today's was that we received a couple hours ago, to raise the per kilowatt hour from 22 cents to 24, effective January 21st, 2024 through the end of the current rate study, which is June 30th, 2026. And final pricing will be determined based on the actual hedge pricing we received from Shell at 10 a.m. on Monday.
As a starting point, can you put up the pie chart?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just for a second.
This is in November or December package?
This is in the packet.
December package.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a separate package marked a public hearing.
I saw
So,
that.
Yeah.
Following our new protocols, we now open it for public hearing, public comment, right?
Not yet. I have some questions on the staff report.
That would come after public comment under the new protocols.
Okay. Can't the board ask questions at this time?
After all public comment is taken, that's when the board discussion happens with the new
Okay.
way. I don't want to, I mean, I'm just saying.
Okay, there were 3 public comments that were submitted in writing. I was going to ask Brandy or you to cover the answers to those since they were submitted in writing.
We get to them.
Or I can, it's page 28.
Go.
That's the first one.
So let's see, as I oppose an increase in electric rates being considered, KMPUD's background discussion and pie chart does not define the non-fuel operating costs or nor portion of fixed costs. According, there's insufficient information to make the decision on the proposed rate charges. Each customer is already charged a significant base rate. Therefore, the increase should not be supported. All those operating costs, those 2 things are defined in the rate study, which is on our website. Anything you want to add on what those are?
Only that the increase is only on the fluctuating market purchase cost of electricity.
I think the question was if you go back to the pie chart. Okay, the portion of the fixed costs, which is 7.2 cents. That is, the majority of that is our debt service. Okay, so I think the question is, what is that? And so that's almost all of that is debt service. The other fixed cost on there is I believe labor and maintenance costs that would occur that are related to usage of power.
That is correct. So it's almost all the debt service we carry for the Owl Valley and the powerhouse rebuild, and the staffing cost to make those operate are included as well.
It's only a portion of the debt service. Most of the debt service is in the base rate. To be
Yes.
That is correct.
So just as a reminder, when we put this together, 80% of the fixed costs were assigned to the base rate and 20% ended up in the variable. in the variable rate. And it was designed to cover our fixed costs if we sold 6.3 million kilowatt hours. Everything after that ended up being extra margin. So I was just trying to make sure that we cover the three questions. And if we didn't cover them adequately, if those people are online, then I would encourage them to raise their hand. So let me now turn to questions from people in the audience.
Did you want to answer the other two or?
Yeah, yes, please.
I appreciate the background on the newsletter from the wholesale market volatility, relatively understandable, but the pie chart introduces several terms which seem to overlap. I think that's been addressed by staff and by Bob. It's also, again, in our rate study, which is on our website, which goes through in quite a bit of detail about what each of these are, with the meter charge being quite simply just the cost for annual meter replacement, which we do with some regularity, and then the base rate as we talked about. So that one's been addressed. And then the last one, what are the factors impacting the wholesale price? It was weather related and supply related, which had to do with weather as well in some cases, not entirely.
I just want to include for that one, there's a very nice analysis that was done by the Energy
It's in the
Institute,
packet.
which
Yes.
is in the packet. The variation goes back for several years, and the volatility is covered in that article, which is why we included it.
Correct. Okay. That you should open up public comment.
Okay, so comment from the audience or online.
There's one in the Q&A. The studies the electric. Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Brittany, if you could tell Chris to check the link on the electric rate study. This has to do with switching from hardwired servers to cloud servers. So we will get that updated.
Eric, and I've already mentioned it to Chris right now. We're working on it as
Great.
we speak.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
It might be updated as we speak. Great. Okay. That was the only online question in the chat. So.
Okay, questions from the audience. Okay, Howard.
Yeah, so we actually get pricing then from Shell or Cal ISO 24 hours ahead? Is that what
No,
happens?
no.
We don't.
The proposal from Shell, we will receive Monday at 10 a.m. and have to sign it by 10:30 a.m. to get hedge pricing for the remaining 2 years.
Use. No, but I'm talking about once we're into that, assuming that that's signed, that's a one-time deal?
Yeah, the pricing's set based on
But
that.
then
Except for
everything's on day ahead pricing, so I mean, it's time of day is what I'm getting at.
No,
No, we're paying a fixed price.
It will be a
Day or
fixed
night?
price, right?
80% of our peak and 50% of our off peak will be a fixed price.
The same fixed price is what we've
Correct.
been currently given.
Okay, so we do have a peak and an off peak.
The Cal ISO has a peak and an off peak. Which the Shell pricing that we've been given is the same for either of those times.
What I'm getting at is I wondered if there are things that the district can do or even individuals can do to shift their use of electricity to lower the overall bill for the community.
We don't know. The hedge is, as Eric said, 80% on peak, 50% off peak for a set price for the duration of the hedge until the end of the end of this rate study. The other remaining percentages are purchased on the day ahead market. Those prices are unknown until they happen. So historically, off peak has been lower, but that has been kind of thrown out the window in the last few years, and it's really volatile.
And I remember pointing that out. I think in one of the charts you gave us was that it was surprising to me to see off peak higher than on peak in some of the pricing that we got. So.
Are there?
Frank did someone else have their hand up?
Okay. It looks like Frank.
Frank.
Okay, Frank, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yes, so it appears that we will still have some volatility if there is a huge spike during particular times of day, and it will impact our overall costs. Is that correct?
Yes, the potential exists for 20% peak and 50% off peak. Yes, Frank, you got it.
And if we had the pricing similar where we had 30 cents a kilowatt hour for a day, is that going to create havoc in any given month?
It could, but to a much lesser extent.
How great could that impact be?
20% of what we saw last year, if it was that dramatic.
So you said 20% of it? So instead of, so it'd be $100,000 in a month instead of $500,000?
That wasn't just a month. That was the whole fiscal year we lost. That
But
was the
it
whole
did
fiscal year.
occur primarily in 1 month.
Primarily in December, a little bit in January, a little bit in February.
Right. So our impact would probably be $100,000. Do we feel that we still have to have some type of reverse billing in case there is some dramatic increase beyond our anticipation? Or is there going to be, some time where it's lower than the hedge price?
Yeah, we're not recommending the propane, a combination of the two. No, just the hedge pricing.
I am a bit concerned that we put ourselves in a position, I mean, say it's not 30 cents, say it's 60 cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, that could be achievable, correct?
It is possible. The market has been kind of all over the place. This was the approach recommended by Shell to stabilize our prices, but also give us the opportunity to benefit if there are lower than expected prices. So it helps us get some stability, but it does leave, like you say, some uncertainty there.
I would add, Frank, that $100,000 worst case scenario is something that's manageable within everything going on. And we'll discuss that later, but it is true that we're not eliminating all risk. It's called a hedge as opposed to a guarantee.
Yes.
But the thing you're pointing out is true.
I didn't realize we were leaving ourselves with that much exposure. I mean, I support the hedge, having the hedge, because we eliminate the volatility, we protect ourselves, we do all the things that we need to do, and it's I understand it's easier on staff time, and we don't have the manpower to do all the things that we would need to do, but I'm still a little bit scared that we could put ourselves in a bind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. Other questions or comments? Howard?
Yeah, I track energy prices and have from
I
years.
expect no less.
And what happened last year was such an extraordinary event, and natural gas prices in a few short months tripled. And it was at a time when our water stores were low in California. There wasn't a lot of hydro, which is our cheapest electricity. So most of the electricity was being produced from natural gas. So it was that literally in a matter of weeks, the price tripled. And and it was basically due to the war in Ukraine. I mean, there'll be other wars, but tripling the natural gas is such an unusual thing. I think this is a very prudent approach and really mitigates our risk. And I think it's a very good way to go.
Thank you.
Question, Brandy, when you talk about.
Hold on, let's finish public comment.
And then we'll go to the
Brand new
board.
set of rules. Let's try to
Yeah,
follow them.
we're gonna
Failing
we're gonna
miserably
hold
so
it.
far, but we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Yes, that
Other
we're-
comments from the public?
I'm seeing none. So now you would entertain a motion to close public comment.
Okay, so I entertain a motion to close the public comment and have board comment.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second. Okay, all in favor?
Hi.
Okay. Open up to the board now. Whoever
Chris
wants
was
to go
first.
first.
Chris is first. Go ahead.
Chris is first.
Brandy, you spoke about the volatility and answered Frank by suggesting, yes, of course, it could spike again. In the previous package, there was this blue graph up and down. And you can't read the small print from there. But the point is there in our materials any description or graph to show like Howard mentions the volatility, or maybe over years? This graph I think is maybe a year and a half. How do we get a picture for how volatile this pricing is?
I did not include a historical long-term.
You can find it on page 12
It's on,
of
okay,
the
it's in the
public
pack,
hearing.
in the public hearing package page.
Yeah,
12.
and that
Thank you.
goes back to 2009.
Thank you. That would be it. I just
So
overlooked
yeah,
it.
take a look at that. And blow it up a little bit. It's
That's the picture that tells 1,000 words. Okay.
yeah, so if you can make that a little bit bigger for everybody. So this is analysis done at UC Berkeley, looking at wholesale electric prices.
Around $50 for up and then spiking last year.
Yeah, but you can see that whole between 2021 through 2023. I mean, if you try to draw a line through that, it looks like it's going upwards. We have seen, yeah, so that's all of California. Our wholesale price is based on the point where we get electricity. So it's more complicated than that, but that gives you a sense of the volatility in the market. So our current structure, we sell electricity at a fixed price and we buy it at a variable price. And the variable price used to look, if you look at 2009 through 2015, 17, it looks
18.
pretty average, but that just is not happening lately. So one of the, yeah, so that, does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
it shows me where to look, but yes,
Yeah.
the crazy spike in June 23, which is in that blue graph. I mean, Ukraine and war, I assume it accounts for December, late 22, but the crazy spike where it went over $1,000 is what? That was this summer.
It was more demand than supply.
Shell gave us, it was in the November packet,
I see.
but just kind of some context on what they're seeing in the market. But there's a lot of, more people using electricity than we had supply. And it's been kind of hard to hit a good balance there.
So do you have any more questions? Sorry.
Last question. I'm new. I'm hearing numbers like $500,000 deficits or was most of the damage done in the December period or by this obscene spike in June?
Most of December.
Okay.
Our sales are so much lower in June that it was not as
But
big of a.
January was pretty right up there too, and
January was,
November
yeah.
was, I would say winter,
Yeah.
not just
Yeah,
December.
you're right. I just,
Yeah.
the label says December. I get it
Yeah,
now. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Doug?
So I appreciate what Frank was saying in terms of that there's still exposure, right? The market can go as high as it goes and we still have exposure. And so one of the things I would think about, there is a locational based marginal price at that node that we can look up on the day ahead market and get an idea from. So I'm wondering if one opportunity here in my new role in the communications committee potentially, in combination with operations, is if we can do staff and however we work this out, thinking about having some tracking of what the LNP is so that we can communicate to the customers at times like we did for propane last year. This is an expensive time and help conserve because, we're going to lose dollars on it, on some of this on the peak. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the ways that we can communicate out some of the pricing to help mitigate some of the risk of the exposure that we will still have for those extraordinary extreme situations that could benefit the community because we would all pay for it eventually. So, something to consider.
It's something to consider, yeah. I wanted to provide a couple comments on this. So first of all, I want to explain just a little bit of background and then get into some specifics. So we have fixed costs, whether we sell a kilowatt hour or 7 million. We did 7.2 million last year, which is an all-time record. We have fixed costs we have to pay independent of that. So we designed a budget, all of us, and that says at 6.3 million kilowatt hours sold, all of our fixed costs are covered. That was the intention behind the budget. And so the 22 cents up until that last kilowatt hour at 6.3 million, then 13.9 cents of that is covering our fixed costs. Okay. The second we go 1 kilowatt hour more, at 13.9 cents, because we've now covered all of our fixed costs, now becomes extra margin that we can use to try to pay down debt or do other things with. So I first wanted to explain that that's the design of the 22 cents. So if we assume that the cost of hedging would make electricity on average 2 cents more per, is that?
Yeah, I think 1.4 was where it came in on the original indicative pricing we received.
Oh, okay. What would you like me to use?
Well, 1.4 was the number, but there was consensus among the board to go with 2 cents.
Okay,
So
So
that was the direction.
let's assume it's 2 cents
And
per
I think the
moment.
shell pricing today came in under that 2 cents. So
Okay,
as of today's pricing, we're good.
all right. So let's assume it could be as high as 2 cents. There's some reason to think it might be a little less. Okay, then that would mean the average bill would be $4.60 more per month for the average customer, because the average consumption is 230 kilowatt hours times 2 cents, you get the $4.60. So what we're really deciding today is the customers want predictability and what their costs are. And right now we can't deal with that. We're providing predictability, and that's the cost is $4.60 more just for yucks. I said if we moved all of that into the fixed base rate, which we could do by taking some amount of base rate out of the variable cost and moving it, it would add $4 a month to the base rate, which is currently $121. So we're buying stability for approximately that price. In my mind, as a customer, I think that's a reasonable place to be for now. And because we buy so little power compared to every other utility, we are the second smallest utility in California. The smallest, does anybody remember who's the smallest? That's the town of Big.
Oh, very good.
So, all right. I probably should have given you more time to get the answer right. So anyway, at that rate, we can't afford to have direct contracts with what we're doing. We're just too small to do it. So I think this is a reasonable starting point to get stability, and we'll learn more. And we may learn, as Frank brought up, we may learn other things that we want to do. That's my thinking on this issue.
Bob, this would be the approach like propane where we alter the bill retroactively?
Yeah, we could have considered that.
Oh, this is not that approach.
No, this is not that approach. The month is predictable. If you use about the same amount of power this December as last December, your bill will be about the same. It won't be 3 times higher.
So that's what we debated in the finance committee meeting and arrived at this recommendation is the hedge does cost some money, like Bob says, maybe $4 a month. But it buys predictability, it reduces administrative cost. And then there's a fairness argument with regarding to doing the propane like back charge, because you charge for an entire month and the cost of electricity would change throughout that month. So it's not as accurate as we'd like it to be. And we don't have the manpower and staffing to invest in making a complete dynamic pricing rate structure. So that is kind of consistent with what Bob just said. The finance committee had the same debate and we came to recommend this.
Rookie question. The volatility in electric pricing that's the basis of this conversation right here. Were we rate payers cushioned from all this in the short term? So it's not as if our monthly rate. Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Else my question would have been what the market reaction was, Brandy, whether your phone rang off the hook. But we've actually all been relatively
We could
cushioned
come up
from
with
it.
a rate that could produce that,
Yeah.
I guess. So where did the money come from? We were fortunate. We had some, because we didn't.
Property tax allocation.
Yeah, it was all come down to property tax allocation and Russ's willingness, which we shouldn't count on as relief for for meeting certain tier ratios.
Yeah.
Well,
So the
also
thing-
that we sold an extra 7.2 compared to 6.5, so that helped with some of that too, right?
Yeah, what I don't know is selling a huge amount extra in December and January when it costs a
Exactly.
fortune to buy. I don't know if that
It
helps.
plays out somewhere, but
Yeah, I didn't do that, man.
The food is awful and the portion's so small.
That's right. That's exactly
per
right.
unit in some periods.
Okay, is there other discussion?
The only thing I would note is that the link for the electric rate study is now fixed. For those people who are trying to get it.
Okay,
I mean, the only other comment I would say is I think it's helpful if we're proactive in tracking these options. So if, if we were to continue to think about what the but-for world would have been so that we can go into the rate study next time with, look, here's what we did here. And what if, we don't have a crystal ball, right? That's why we're hedging. These prices could drop and we could be, less expensive to stay on the day-ahead market somehow. But just going and being proactive in that so that we have this information going into the next rate study, I think would be prudent for us.
I agree. Any other comments? So we next move to close the public hearing or that?
No.
No,
You
next.
would take action on ordinance 23-02.
Okay, so do you want to just mention exactly what the ordinance?
Sure.
That's fine.
And I would also add that the motion to adopt it should include flexibility based on the actual shell pricing.
Okay,
But so basically all it does, the whole meat of it, there's just a bunch of wherefores and sequa things, but really the whole meat of it is right here. And it shows 22 cents running through December 31st of this month. And then 24 cents running from January 1st of 24 through the end of fiscal year 25-26, which is June 30th. That's on page 4.
thank you.
That's really all that this does.
Okay, and then what your authority to enter into this agreement on Monday has a ceiling on the price?
I would presume the board would like to put a ceiling on
Right,
that of
okay.
2 cents, and I think that's a reasonable ceiling.
So a ceiling of 2 cents.
Yeah, if it's more than that, then we want to bring it back.
Hopefully Shell's not listening.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't think we're a big enough customer for Shell for them to care.
Okay,
Sorry, Frank, public
Ready for
comments
a motion?
closed.
okay, so we ready for a motion? Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Okay, and what you're approving is entering into a hedge contract with Shell not to exceed 2 cents per kilowatt hour and changing the rate effective next billing cycle, January billing cycle.
January 1st would be the effective rate,
Right,
effective of
okay,
these
not
rates.
December, but in January, to 24 cents
Yes.
and continuing
And
that.
I presume the board would not mind if we went less than 24 if Shell's hedge pricing comes in lower. Presuming that would be okay.
Yes.
And that means that it all will go into variable, none into fixed.
Yes,
Correct.
that's right.
I missed that. Okay.
Okay, so it's been moved. Is there a second? Second by Doug. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Now you can close the public hearing.
thank you. I consider it closed. All right. Okay, thank you, everybody, for that. We're now ready to move on to 10E. Thank you, Brandy.
Yep.
Okay, we're now ready for 10E, finances.
Hello all.
Hello, Tommy.
So it was pretty straightforward. A recommendation from the finance committee was listing out the operating other income and the non-operating income other and what those are for. So those were listed clearly on the overview and budget variances. The main one I'd like to kind of talk about
This is page 32 of the packet.
Correct.
This is page 32, overview and budget variances for
Okay, thank you.
the finances. And that's that first item.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to discuss, Bob?
Let me see if there's any questions
Please.
from the board,
From the public first.
from the public first.
You're gonna get it by the end of this. I know you got it, Bob. You're gonna get it.
I was just doing it to pull your chain. Okay, are there any questions from the public on the budget overview?
Or just the financials
Or
at
the
all?
financial
I do the-
statements? In total. Okay,
Is
not,
there a motion to close the public hearing?
we need to do that for every item?
That's the protocol we adopted. I mean, it's not uncommon to do it this way, but
Oh, okay, I thought we were only doing it for things that were identified as a public hearing.
oh, I thought it was for every item that the board takes action on. You could do
Oh,
it
no.
now.
It's tedious.
It's a little tedious, but,
Okay.
And this is because of the Roberts rules.
yeah,
I think that's,
Guess we should have tested
I
it
don't-
first.
yeah, I think for things that
every
are,
vote on Roberts rules, we're gonna have to do this.
I think for a
It's
public
really-
hearing, it's appropriate,
Yeah.
the formality,
Yeah.
and for the individual
agenda.
items. Okay, so I don't see any questions, so are there questions from the board on the finances?
No, I think this first sheet is really helpful, because we used to dig through all the reports in detail, and then you'd find other income of $100,000 or $200,000, and you'd say, what's that? So now having all that laid out, which the majority of it this year was, or this reporting period was snow removal was paid ahead of budget. So we're about $100,000 higher than budget there. But we didn't see anything else in the package when we reviewed it in finance.
Okay. There's no other questions. Then can we talk about the cash flow? I think would be the next item. Tommy, my question for you on cash flow is the accounts payable or accounts receivable rather seems have many more line items than normal, but cash seems pretty good. Is there a relationship?
Yeah, the
Or-
accounts receivable, there was a huge delinquency and that was corrected. All of that was corrected yesterday, Tommy?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, there was a lot.
Two hundred
that
and
was-
fifty
A
thousand.
huge bill that was paid,
Oh,
but someone was delinquent and had a lot of late fees. and
okay,
Made good on that on yesterday morning.
okay. And this cash flow is reflected prior to that,
Yeah, we
Correct.
don't, we don't update this day to day. No.
right? Okay,
Did that answer your question, Bob?
yes.
Any other
So
questions?
cash is better than what's shown
It is
here.
as of yesterday morning,
Yeah,
yes.
okay,
$250,000.
okay. Are there other questions on cash flow? Okay, thanks. Let's move on. Thank you, Tommy, then. We'll move on to
My
item F.
pleasure.
All right. Annual employee bonuses.
We let them off too easy.
We let them off too easy?
Yeah.
Okay, you better be watching it next month.
Tommy, Tommy's too happy.
We're gonna pass out questions in advance.
No, I really appreciate, I mean, especially John and Doug and Eric really helped me build in that overview. And I really think that's been the primary focus. That's really helped everything. So I really thank everyone for their help with that.
Almost a rhetorical question, but the purpose of this variance report overview is what, Tommy?
look at
Basically,
it.
we used to have a lot of questions from sheet to sheet, and instead of going through 30 sheets, we consolidated all the things, all the anomalies onto one sheet. The things that we've identified as anomalies, along with explanations for the anomaly.
Yeah, because once you have one, it just propagates through all the statements.
Yeah,
And so you'd say, well, what's on this page? Why is this here? Why is this here? And then once you see, oh, we got $100,000 more than we got $100,000 early for snow removal, then you can say, oh, I get it. Like that's why it'll show up in all these different places.
but the overview does not include cash flow. Is that right?
No, cash flow is its own thing that we do at the end.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's through October. Because you don't have the November bills had not gone out at the time of finance.
They're out now.
Okay, is there anything else on finance? We'll move on. Okay, holiday bonuses then, item F.
Just bringing this for board ratification of so the original budgeted amount for this year was 14,000 due to turnover in staff and the salary adjustments that were made from the salary survey that the board adopted. No one should be below the range when the range gets adjusted for COLA every year. The actual cost is would be 15,754, which is a variance to the budget. So this is for board action if they wish to provide bonuses, and if so, the previous method for as in the last 2 decades or something different.
Okay, are there any comments from the audience?
You don't have to do that now. We've jettisoned. We're going straight to chaos here, Bob.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve the bonus amount of 15,754.77?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. We're next ready for performance reporting.
Right, so performance reporting for November. Taking a look at electric, you see that we had production of 778,000 kilowatt hours, all purchased off the grid. Our unidentified system losses were at 39,000. That's 5% for the month. That does include a little catch up for backside meters that we were able to get to. We're sitting at 10% year to date for unidentified system losses. And then propane on the same sheet, you can see that it wasn't quite as much usage as we expected and budgeted for. We had a usage of 1.66 million cubic feet, metered 1.68 cubic feet, which was a little higher. And as everyone, but maybe Chris is aware, we do see a lot of fluctuation in our propane usage and metered. That has to do with temperature and pressure fluctuations. As long as that number year to date is positive or negative, between positive and -5, I'm not too worried. So seeing it sit at 3% for the year is a comfortable number for me. Any questions on either of those before we go on to water, wastewater? Okay. Water. We had a production at our wells of 650,000 gallons. Our metered was right at that. That's higher than budgeted, in large part because we were making snow at Timber Creek, which does come off of our well water. You do see a -2%. That's a little unusual in water. But we can attribute that to our tank levels being high at the end of October. And you see that October did show a large loss. 15% for the year. We'd like to see that come down some, but that is about in the range of norm. And then lastly, wastewater. We metered 493,000 gallons coming into our wastewater plant. Metered in this sense is water meters flowing from houses, 400,000 gallons, giving us an unidentified usage, which is I&I coming into our system of 16%.
Explain for Chris, I&I.
I&I.
Inflow and infiltration.
Thank you. So that's water that
God
gets
bless you.
into our collection system from groundwater or flowing off the roads into manholes that's not coming through the sewer system.
Okay.
And I've included here the aquifer level sheet so that you can see our aquifer levels pumped and where we're sitting. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have here.
We used to include the 3-year comparison.
We did. And so our billing was, I was doing this right at the end of billing. And there, for some reason, and I didn't have a chance to look into it, there's a gap in our 3-year chart. And so I didn't have time to look into that.
Oh,
I will look into that next month and we'll get that back in here.
Okay. You can, obviously, if you ever need help, let me know.
Thank you. I probably will.
Okay. All right. So any questions on performance reporting? Okay, then let's move on to the meter shed. Status.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but we're down to one sheet. So all of the commercial meter protection is completed and signed off on, and we're thrilled about that.
Wow.
That's good news.
Wow.
Good news. We're still moving through the last few residential protections. We have 3 people that have put in requests for extensions through the general manager. They've laid out a plan, explained why they haven't been able to do it yet, have gotten, dates and ordering. Those have been approved and pushed out to 2024. Of the 8 that are left in November and December, of those 5 are vents. They are waiting on only the vent to be installed. We did get one contractor who received a bunch of vents last week. He's getting those installed. And then there's 3 that are still on the shut off list that we continue to contact, but might actually end up being shut off. So overall, 93% of the residential meters have been completed. People have really responded well. John Campbell has taken this project and really worked with a lot of people to try to get this done. So we're very happy to be here as opposed to where we were a couple years ago. We'll continue to work with the folks that need to get these done. Probably this is the last time you'll see this winter, because here's hoping it starts snowing a lot and we forget about construction for a minute. But we will continue with these 3 customers. If they are not able to get them done and they're not able to get a plan and to get those done, we might see a maximum of 3 shutoffs this year.
Are there a couple of minutes to talk about this program, or if it's written up in a recent board package, just feel free to point me to that. I'm aware of this. I had it done at my house. I'm assuming about 100 or how many, I don't know how many customers had to make these revisions.
I feel like it was
Was it a-
158.
But how much?
I think it was
158?
158.
That sounds.
And it sounds like, I have a sense it's spread over the last 2 years.
Yes.
And we're almost done, 93% finished, I take, is what BTS indicates. You sound satisfied or happy with the project. What's the big win from having done this? And does the community, the residential market, understand why we did it? They do know what it costs.
Those are very good questions.
Those are very good questions.
Yeah.
So the big win is we had a huge amount of snowfall last year and nothing blew up. And I'm just thrilled about that.
Although we did have 3 break that would have blown up had we not caught them as early as we did, because they were unprotected, even though
You
they
allowed
had
it 3 break.
there were 3 pieces of equipment, whether they were pipes or fittings
At
on
individual
propane lines on individual homes that had not built their things to standard over last winter, that actually broke and jeopardized not only their homes, but their neighbor homes and our firefighters and propane operators' lives.
Wasn't it Whiskey Tower too?
Whiskey Tower was one of them. That is
Yeah.
correct.
And
Yeah.
So the gas was
And 2
going out the
residentials.
elevator ducts.
In asking this question, I will reveal that I don't read my newsletters well enough, but was this all the stuff of newsletters? Should I have read about this?
Yes.
Wow.
It all started back with the 2 explosions in 1617.
Uh-huh.
And that precipitated this. And this came out of the advice of legal counsel as a means of protecting the district and limiting our liability and exposure. Due
These
to
near misses of last year, were they communicated?
yes,
to the-
yes.
And have been resolved in all 3
In all 3
cases. And
cases.
the customer has made.
Communicated to the customer,
No, I
but
meant communicated to the world.
I don't think we did made a big deal of trying to highlight a specific house.
Oh, yeah, I'm not.
That
No, we didn't identify people.
I'm
We
not
identified.
doxing anybody, but just
Yeah.
letting I'll just use the word the market to be these homeowners and ratepayers. There was, I'm sure you heard it more than I did, but there's plenty of grumbling, like, why do we have to do this? And the restrictions are so strict. But that just last year, I mean, everybody knows the snowfall, but I doubt they know that there were 2 or 3 or 4 real cases of near miss.
So this has been in our newsletter since 2017, at least once a year, if not twice. And those near misses, the one that was up in Palisades HOA 3 years ago, that was in our newsletter, and the near misses this last winter were in our newsletter.
But, you know, it wouldn't be bad. You know, Doug, you can take a look. It wouldn't be bad to reinforce, hey, we just came out of a bad winter.
I'm imagining.
It's not really just, it's not, the biggest issue is when those leaks happen, Rick and fire department have to go in and resolve it.
Yeah.
So there's a personal injury and risk. It's, you know, you said one of them was, had you even nervous? One of the houses you went into.
And we're putting district staff and firefighters in harm's way, trying to mitigate issues with lines, and this is crux of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And when John, Brandy, other staff members talk to individual homeowners who have a hardship or push back and say, why do I have to do this? They give those examples like, we're trying to protect you and your property.
Yeah. Basically what happens, I'm guessing, is that snow ice settle for and just snaps something.
It's a variety of things. But all it has to do is snow and ice.
Yeah, okay. Right, thanks a lot.
Okay, good.
And Flora has a question, Bob.
Okay. Go ahead, you have the floor. Oops.
There we go.
All right, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I just a comment about propane connections is it's my understanding that oftentimes those leaks are occurring on the client side of the meter when the piping is on the outside of the house, which isn't something that's currently addressed, I believe, in the PUD requirements or the county requirements, and wondering if there's more communication we can do to help inform people that that is also hazardous and that that's something that they should be looking at modifying or protecting when they're doing these.
Yeah, great question. Do you want to answer that, Brandy? Thank you.
I would, thank you. And absolutely, downstream of the meter, especially on exterior propane pipes, is a big problem. We've communicated this to customers where we've noted it's a problem. Now, there's a couple of odd ones out there where the pipe goes into the house and then comes back out somewhere else and we're not aware of it. But the ones that we're aware of, we've tried to communicate to the customer. We've also been in contact with the county building department and TriTac to see if we can't get a special code for this area that addresses this. Because on all three of the ones last year, it was an exterior propane pipe after the meter that caused the problem. So something that we should continue to work on, definitely a hazard.
Okay, other questions? If not, not hearing any, let's move on to item I, electric power content. A shocking number with a good explanation.
So we've seen this before this year, even at the board during our power source disclosure. And it was approved back in August, I believe. However, once those get approved and go back to the state, the California Energy Commission puts together this really specific format with the graph here. And this has to be approved by the board. Again, we didn't realize that, or we would have brought it back as two separate ones in August. But we have submitted this, and so this is coming back to you for approval. You'll see the utility average. So and for anyone who was not paying attention in August, what we do is purchase most of our power off the grid as unspecified power, which means it's not tied to any particular resource, even if it is a green resource. We deal with our environmental RECs separately by buying unbundled RECs, which you'll see down here at the bottom. So all of our power is either unspecified or other, which is diesel from the powerhouse. After the rate study went into effect, we started purchasing enough category 1 RECs to offset 100% of our sales. You'll see that catch up next year because those started getting delivered in 2022. So this 38% was for the power that was sold in 2021. We retired these RECs in 2022. We have no control over the format of this label. This is mandated by the state. We have to put it exactly like this on this label. So I can answer questions, but I can't change the format.
But the 956 pounds represents 100 all diesel. That's what diesel. Thanks.
This is actually because of this is what is assigned to us as unspecified power. So we don't do this calculation. This is what the state uses as their number for unspecified power plus our little bit of diesel in there.
So it's probably power minus RECs.
Probably so. It's probably got some natural
man.
gas in there,
Oh.
but that 956 is generated based on our entries here. The only thing that we enter here is this category here
Okay.
under our.
All right. So what's before the board is we either violate the law or we accept this as is.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, we're required by law to accept this exactly as is.
unless you think that there is some discrepancy
In the
on
numbers that we
the
submitted.
numbers that we submitted, which are the
Yeah.
1.4 and 98.6.
Is to accept this as is a violation of the law?
No.
No.
We have no choice but to accept this as is.
Okay.
Unless there's a problem with those two numbers, the 1.4 and the 98.6.
The objective, of course, the purpose of this whole thing is for utilities to be driving their renewable up, and that would drive this greenhouse emission down, and we look bad being above the Cal average. It's that simple, right? And the problem for us, if I understand you correctly, is that in buying from Cal ISO, they just don't specify the source, so we don't know what's from the wind and the solar and the hydro and everything else.
We're not big enough to have contracts with anyone
Where
to
they
have,
specify.
specified power. We will never be able to get specified
So,
power.
because it's labeled unspecified, the state makes negative assumptions.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yes. And you will see that, you'll see that normally our percentage of retail sales will be higher. We're shooting for 100%.
Retail sales.
That are
Thirty-8%.
Offset by the renewable energy credits. That's how we.
Nothing to do with commercial residential, is
Nope.
it? Okay. Okay.
That's
We
how
buy something called
offset.
renewable energy credits that offsets 100% of our sales of electricity. It's not reflected in this, as Brandy said, 'cause everything lags by a year.
Yeah.
So next year you should see that percentage almost, much higher, if not
It should
100%.
be 100%.
The 38% number you're referring to?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we made the change in August 1st of 2021. So we only had that last 4 months, which about a third of the year. So there you go. That's why it's 38.
Where do these numbers come from where it says coal
From the
2.1?
state.
Oh, that's state
We have
average?
nothing to do with anything. It's the only lines we have to do with is other, which is.
But are those
1.4.
numbers relevant to Kirkwood or are they state averages?
That's the unspecified power allocations.
Oh, okay. If you're unspecified, this is what we're
That's
giving
what it
you.
looks like. Yep.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry, next year we'll have all these same questions because I've been here 7 years and we have the exact same questions. So you got them out of the way, Chris. You did a good job. You got all of them covered.
But what we communicate to customers could be what's actually happened.
Yes.
Right,
This-
exactly,
this
100%
we
Rex.
put this on our website and then we will
By
have
law,
an
yeah.
explanation of why.
Okay.
When our customers if they want to know whether Kirkwood sources green energy and to what percent, we're just not in a position to answer that.
No, we are. If you look at your statement, you'll see a little star and it
Yeah.
says 100% renewable.
Mhm.
Since August 1st, 2021, we've been buying renewable energy credits for every kilowatt hour sold.
Because we do that.
But this is a label that is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so there's two
Not
different,
for
there's
right
two
now.
completely separate things. There's the power label of what we buy, and there's the RECs that we do to offset the power label that we buy.
That's right.
So there, if you think of them in two different categories,
Yeah, thank
you'll be
you.
much more sane.
Okay.
Good point. Okay, is there a motion to approve this wonderful label?
I move to approve it.
A second. Okay, second by Doug, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. Okay, so the next thing is the low income electric program needs assessment.
Yes, so we finally completed the needs assessment. We did receive one late survey, which I will incorporate as we go about building this. If we go about building this, but just for Chris's edification, because he wasn't here and obviously wouldn't remember, we are required by law to do a needs assessment, basically looking at need-based assistance. When the district acquired Mountain Utilities, this is a requirement of the CPUC. California Energy Commission had not adopted it at that time when we acquired them. So, but they eventually did, and we never caught it, or they had adopted 10 years before. So when we came over, no one knew we were supposed to do this. So basically, we finally got this done. 20 years, Doug, late. But we did get it done. So we did complete a needs assessment. Now, that being said, the board does not have to adopt a low income program because of the needs assessment, but that regardless, you're required to conduct a needs assessment and decide if a low income program is something the board wants to pursue. So planning committees had this for some time and gone through a lot of iterations, getting this survey out and all those things, looking at the results. And the planning commission recommends that the board direct staff to develop a low income program. It looks at this time as if we have probably 2 people that will qualify if we want to implement it. And I've already started gathering information on other low income programs. Doug's been helping me look at that. And so we'll be able to bring something back in pretty short order, I would think, Doug, for recommendation on that, at least if the board wants to pursue it. Again, the board's under no obligation to create a low income program. And I should say also, this only applies to electric, doesn't apply to anything else. Only applies to electric. You can't have low income programs for water or wastewater paid for by rates. You can't do that because of Proposition 218. But electric, but electric, you can do it. So this will apply, and we would use public benefit charge, PBC. You'll hear us say PBC a lot. Public benefits charge fund would be what would pay for that. We collect 2.85% on our net sales every year of electricity. And so there is a fund. It's about $35,000 to $41,000 a year, roughly. It varies. I think we have 85,000. I think I told you, Doug. So for really the question is, so the needs assessments here, I'm happy to answer questions about the needs assessment. The next question becomes, does the board want to adopt a low income program? And if so, then direct staff to start gathering it. There's plenty of examples out there. It's not a big lift, quite frankly, for staff to pull together, because almost everybody has the same program, just their percentages and dollars vary, because some people have $8.8 million in PBC funds. We have $80,000. So the dollar amount will change, but the programs are almost universally similar in their requirements and their application.
Can I just clarify too, just the recommendation from the planning committee was not that the full 100% of the $80-some thousand
no.
would be used to finance a low income program, because there are other elements of what PBC funds can be used for, which are not this. That's one component. So I just want to make sure that's clear, that this is not saying the full amount is recommended to go towards that.
And as Doug and I discussed, in building a recommended program, if the board wants to do one, we would say allot this percent of PBC annually. And when it runs out, it runs out. First come, first served kind of thing, which is what everybody does across the state for all the public owned utilities. Investor owned utilities have a completely different set of rules than us. So it's definitely not an apples to apples comparison, although I have pulled their information. They have a whole different set of rules. CPUC governs them, which is not us. So if the board wants to adopt it, that's the first question. And then the second would be to direct staff to develop it if the board wants to adopt it.
I'll just add, just from the planning committee perspective, sorry, Chris. It's just that I think our general motivation is that Kirkwood is a great place that we want to encourage people to be able to live in. And if there are low income customers that we can benefit with this, and we think we should be able to go forward with this. And there are lots of examples out there, so staff would not be starting from scratch, and cost of implementation would be reasonable, we think. So therefore, that was our recommendation as to why to make sure this is available to our customers.
But what did we deduce from the, it looks like there was a survey done, 180 people, not very many bothered to respond, and one seemed to qualify. So is there any significant need for all this in the community? What do we infer from the survey?
Anecdotally, I think everyone knows this is an affluent second home community. For the most part, there are some year-round residents. The board set the criteria that people had to live here at least half time to qualify for it. So that cut the amount of surveys that went out to 186. And the board also decided that the income threshold would be 100% of the California median income, recognizing that it's higher cost of living here than elsewhere in the state. Many programs use 50% to give you an idea. But the board, so those are the two things the board did. So we have 13 responses now. As I said, one came in very late.
Is that?
And of those, it would appear that because there's an income verification component to everybody's program. Show me you're on CalFresh, show me you're on welfare, show me your tax returns. How many people are willing to do that? Well, that cut, many of those people out. So ostensibly at the end of the day, there's 2 people out of 789 electric connections that may qualify.
That are low income, willing to verify it and live here at least half time.
Yeah.
Half time defined as half the number of days in the year.
And this is something we initiated because of the reasons you mentioned before.
Correct.
It's not like there's a public grounandwell of demand for this or.
But I mean, there have been
Yeah, there have
requests,
been requests.
Oh,
but it isn't a lot of people, but we have had requests.
Yeah.
For relief.
In my time, there's been one person that's requested it in 7 years. One.
And I would just say also that this is the current population, and one can hypothesize that if this was available, maybe you entice people to move here and qualify as well. So there are other elements to this as well. So I just personally think it's the right thing to do. It's a use of these funds that we collect, and
the implementation is not substantial on
Not
staff, right?
onerous. No,
Okay.
especially if we limit it, which as many do. The application period is once a year and you have to verify annually, et cetera. It's a pretty low lift for administration.
Okay, let me see, are there any questions from the audience or on Zoom? Okay, not seeing any. Is there?
I will motion.
Okay, there's a motion to instruct staff to propose a low income program.
Second.
And it's been seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Future board meeting date time.
Let me skip to that, Bob. I had all the survey stuff in here.
Yeah,
So as we discussed, the last 2 board meetings,
page 70.
yeah, page 70. There was a desire to revisit the date and time. Just did it make sense, the time and date we were meeting? So really the driver of everything ends up being financial at the end of the day in terms of having the most information available. So generally billing occurs between the 1st and the 4th of each month, depending on how the holidays and weekend fall. For example, if Monday was the 3rd, billing wouldn't even start until the 4th. It can take up to 3 days to do the billing. Then we have to prepare preliminary reports for PCS, which take up to 2 days. And then accounting for the occasional delays in manual meter reads, we have meters we have to go read out in the system by hand. They're not all electronic. They don't come into our system. The prior monthly may not be available as late as the 10th of any month. So currently committees meet on the first, second, third, and fourth week of the month. If the board desires to ensure the incorporation of all committee topics within the same month, this should also be considered. So if we were to move, staff would recommend that the board be set for the 4th Friday. This allows finance should meet in the 3rd week. That gives us a full week, not just from Tuesday to Friday, which is currently what we're living with finance to board. It gives us a full week and a half to incorporate all of finance. The reason the packets go out on Wednesday is because finance is on Tuesday right now. And so we have to get all the finance stuff. And as John said, and rightly so, there's 1 to 3 things come out of finance every month. So considering that, finance should meet the 3rd week, board should meet the 4th week. If we want to make changes, those would be the logical ones to make. And then the other ones could fall anywhere else they wish to be.
Yeah, I mean,
Does that make sense, John? I mean,
yeah,
It's
I
better if
was-
we get the materials out in front of people in advance.
yeah, I brought this up before too, because it was like the board packets are dependent on all this stuff, and I would appreciate more than 48 hours in most cases to be able to review our board packets. So, because sometimes they are hundreds of pages.
Mhm.
And so I want to make sure that we're being responsible and thorough in our jobs. So I generally am supportive of this. I would say January would be, I would say like, when do we want to start this? Because I think probably some
Well,
people.
of course, we want to meet twice this month.
I think a lot.
What a silly
A
question.
lot of us is, a lot of board members as well as staff have made vacation plans relying on
Right.
the second Friday.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And, so recognizing that, when would we want to implement it? And I think one thought that I heard, and I think it's a good idea, is we can implement it as soon as January. And if we hit a hiccup, we can shift the board date because I won't have a quorum of board members or all the managers are out for that same Friday. It would be easy enough to do that, I think, or we could hold until further.
I would push it out more so people can proactively plan around it.
That's fine. They could start the fiscal year.
March or something.
March, April, even the fiscal year.
Yeah,
it's
April.
fine. Sooner the better, I would say, because it would be nice to
In
have.
some sense, maybe getting feedback from staff and the board, whether is there.
I
Is
have
there
a
a
good
question?
handle on any conflicts this would create for staff. So I'm already, and
Okay.
it's not onerous.
Okay,
It's not onerous, this switch. So
I like the idea. Maybe we could just ask board to give you feedback on a starting month.
March is fine with us. That gives us time to put in the newsletter so the public's aware of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
Okay,
And that would, because I mean, we have to put it in 3 times for it to sink in, I think, in a written format. So we could just
So
reminder that the board meeting
we'd have
is,
the February board meeting the second Friday and then 6 weeks later.
January, February, and then March we would start. Is that what you said, Doug? Or did you say March would be the old way?
John said it. Yeah.
March is okay. It's the 22nd, luckily.
I actually know I will not be able to do the 22nd of March, actually.
Yeah, I was checking because I'll be gone on the 29th. So.
So how about April?
Yes, April.
Yes,
Start.
April would be.
Okay.
I would-
And then we'll,
Yeah, I'll be back.
Okay, so the proposal is this would start April 26th. And the previous meeting then would have been March 8th.
correct. Probably should make a motion on that one since it
Okay.
is a,
I'll motion.
All right, so there's a motion that's starting
April 26th.
April 26th. The board meetings are the fourth Friday. The regular board meetings unless an exception. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
and then what I'd recommend is as each committee meets, that we discuss moving them around, particularly finance, I think is probably one of the more important ones. But everybody should, I mean, we have almost all new chairs. It might behoove us to look at days and times as our first meeting as well as charters, if that's okay with
Yeah.
the consensus of the board. I could put that as the agenda items.
Yeah.
For all the chairs.
Mhm.
Good, we'll do.
Okay, great. So move on to major projects. Update.
So not really a lot has changed on major projects. We're continuing to move forward on everything. I'm still waiting on a scope and fee for the propane master plan, so I have pushed that out. Since I still don't have a engineer on board to do that. Not that there's many that do propane, which is why it's taken so long to find someone to do it. But I do have someone that is capable, they're familiar with our system, mechanical engineer. And their engineering firm has a rate study team. So I'm confident I'll get a proposal this month, which would start us off in Q1. So I've similarly pushed back the propane rate study 1 month to account for the master plan being delayed, or by 1 quarter due to the master plan being delayed. Other than that, everything is the same. Any questions on any of the major projects?
I don't hear any. Okay. Good. So general managers report.
Let's see. So, some of the management, there's been a pretty good month of interesting meetings. CMUA had a interesting meeting on something called SGIP, which has to do with funding for EV vehicles for fleet switchover, which is not available to publicly owned utilities, or municipally owned utilities. And so there's been a push from CSDA, CMUA, not so much Aqua yet, but they will be soon. I know they're looking at it to eke out funding from the CPUC and probably not even to CEC. CPUC will probably still administer it, but eke out some of the SGIP funds as people try to electrify their fleets. And so it's a working group right now. Hopefully it'll go back as some proposed legislation in the future. But there was a lot of interesting comments, especially from LA Department of Public Water. They wanted to go out on their own and didn't want to be with anybody else, for example. But all of the small utilities said we all want to work together cooperatively because you have to have an administrator of the program, and LA wanted their own. Everybody else said we'll just use CPUC's already pre-approved administrators that they use for the IOUs, investor-owned utilities. So that was good. We also had a wildfire mitigation plan forum put on by CMUA this week, which was very interesting. Lots of really cool toys that I would love to have, like LiDAR to go look at the trees under our lines, but it's a lot of money to do that. But it's cheaper than undergrounding. So that 400,000 a mile, it's cheaper than 2 million a mile to underground. So they have active LiDAR cameras on their towers that are on every tower. So it was neat to see. Just nothing really helps us, unfortunately. Our rates are high enough. I don't want to add any new projects to do that. And then I went to a water law seminar. There are some changes in water law. Don't know that they'll impact us unless we ever want to look at capable surface water. But there's pre-1914 water rights, as Terry well knows, are and thank you for turning me on to that webinar, by the way. Yeah. There's some changes coming down the pike. Met with the auditors. They promised that we will have a draft audit to share with the finance committee this month, which we'll consider in January. And let's see, I know Rick talked about the membrane debacle with Coke last month, but we met with them regarding, quite frankly, liability and what their plan was.
That's wastewater?
This is wastewater, correct? Yep. And then we had a
Do
new.
they have a plan? Or-
Don't leave us hanging there. Come on.
If I had something to report, I would tell you. But we
Okay.
laid our position down firmly, and they were supposed to be bringing us back a schedule and a plan, and any costs that
For
they
Chris's
think.
benefit, you want to just give the 1 minute summary?
Explain the membrane issue maybe too.
Yeah. So in short, we ordered membranes, very specific membranes that were supposed to have been modified, numerous emails, very thorough paper trail of what they were supposed to sell us. This company got bought out in the interim, and we were just sending off the shelf membrane that will not work. It needs fabrication to happen. So we sent them back to them, and we are working through, like I said, liability, ownership, and a plan. So we hope to have them installed, but I also now have to work around the wastewater treatment plant contractor, KG Walters, so I don't incur what are called delay claims to the tune of $25,000 a day. So otherwise I'll hang that on Coke's neck.
I don't know. I need to read up and learn up about the whole wastewater plant. It's this membrane bioreactor approach. Is that
That's the secondary treatment of it, and then disposal is in leach fields.
when you refer to this membrane problem, that's primary or secondary?
Secondary treatment.
Okay, so that is all part of MBR, this
It
membrane
is
problem.
MBR, membrane bioreactor.
Okay, so you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, and I have a slight, I have a sense of what you're talking about, but where is this written up, or in what committees is it discussed? How does one find out the status and learn more about the wastewater project?
That's definitely been in board packets for years now, and there's reports I can send you. There's a few reports of substance I can send
There's
you.
the engineering study.
There's the preliminary design, then there's and then there's the design report. Those are the two that are probably the most relevant. So I can send you those.
Okay, or yeah, that'd be great.
I think that's it.
Okay, great. Rick, operations report?
Your son was the manager. That part of the business.
Yeah. You could, be happy to show you.
Really not too much to discuss with operations.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's not, hasn't snowed enough to really open the whole mountain up, which gives operations staff time to catch up on projects. And I believe, and I'm looking at Brandy here, we're doing in pretty good shape across the board with all the departments, getting things buttoned up for winter, put away, as well as repairing and making sure equipment works through the winter. The snow removal team is completely staffed up, and they have had an opportunity to use that mid-sized blower on a couple occasions for sides of the roads, and we're extremely pleased with the way the machine works, how well and how productive it is to throw the snow, as well as it's taking the load off the smaller tracks and allowing them to work in the tighter areas like the driveways and the parking pads. And that's about it for operations. I'll go into fire unless there's any questions about any of the water, wastewater, and anything in operations.
If you don't have it, if you don't have it already planned, I just think it'd be great to do an update in this next newsletter. And if you wanted a hand, I'd be happy to pitch in.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, because I mean, I see them everywhere out working and getting trained and getting up to speed. So it's very.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say the customer feedback that I've heard has been positive so far. So that's great to hear. And when there's a big storm and all that stuff, they're all anticipating anxiously to see what happens, but everyone's been really happy so far that I've talked to. So great work so far.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, you were saying
On the wastewater plant, just starting next week, they start the asbestos and mold remediation at the wastewater plant offices. So all the operators have moved to the conference room for a few months or a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
For fire, October was actually a pretty quiet month for us. We had a total of 3 calls. One was a motor vehicle accident with 4 patients in the ice box. And 2 others were medicals here within the valley. One of those medicals involved in aircraft. So year to date, we're up to 114 calls, which is about 30 more than last year this time. But historically, that's about average. And I'm also pleased to announce that there were 0 on-call shifts not taken, meaning that we were able to cover the on-call shifts for the month of October. And November looks like it's filled up as well. And I want to say thank you to Captain Gomez, Captain Patterson, as well as Captain Taylor. We've taken the initiative to make sure at least a captain's covering all shifts. That means we can train some of the newer volunteers who are very eager and want to participate and train them correctly on the job, on the calls. So other than that, we are continuing to work on our SOPs, which the department's has had informal SOPs. We're working with a company called Lexipol, which Alpine County uses as well, to revise and update what we have, as well as to implement some new ones. We'll be launching those to the volunteers probably in January. Right now, we've done 35 and there's about 120 total. So it's going to take a little bit, but it's going to set the department up in a good fashion, especially for liability. And then finally, we've also introduced, again, another product from Lexipol, something called Fire Rescue One, which is an online training platform for the volunteer firefighters. And so I've been assigning, starting with simple things like personal protection equipment assignments. And if you're familiar with Target Safety or any other learning platform that's online, essentially it's a video program with questions. You take tests, and then ultimately you have to. I set the goal of 80% for the final exam for each chapter. But it's a way for me to introduce training to the volunteers before we actually come to the trainings on Wednesday nights. And so far it's been well received, and I've got a couple of volunteers who are so eager, like, well, give me more. I want to learn more. which is really great. So, and that's my update for the fire department. Oh, good point. I was gonna hold off, but Eric slid me a note here.
I was gonna slip it to you otherwise.
I have good news to report. The ISO, as you know, we went through an ISO Insurance Services Organizations review. Again, the ISO is the company that really helps insurance companies determine what the property value would be, or the risk for fire and associated with your property insurance. Historically, we've had a ISO rating of 4 here in the Kirkwood Valley. And so every 5 years they come and do a review of the communications, the department's operations, as well as our water supply. And long story short, I'm pleased to announce we were able to retain our ISO rating for the next 5 years. So that's good news. We were a little bit nervous, especially with the lack of personnel that we've had historically, but I've been working with the same ISO inspector for several years now. We have a good rapport, and so I think that was definitely beneficial for us. So that's the ISO. And then finally, as I lose my voice, we graciously accepted a grant from the 501c3 in the tune of $395,000 to allow us to purchase a Type 2 fire engine for the fire department. This is a 2017 Rosenbauer fire truck. And what's unique about this truck, it has a larger pump capacity, which allows us to, again, complement our department, especially with the ISO rating, and it replaces the 37-year-old fire truck that we have on board. This truck is a 4-wheel drive. It's down in the fire bay. I'll be happy to give you a tour of it. But it's really more of a wildland interface fire truck. So I think it'll not only be a good asset for us because we can, use it to work off our own fire hydrant water system here, but we could also assist Alpine County as well as Amador counties in the event of a wildland event. This is the truck that you want to take out there on those events. The truck is technically not in service, and I wasn't really going to bring it up, but until we could get registration, title, hoses, all the equipment on it, and then do what we historically have always done, push the truck back into service, push the truck literally back into the fire bay. It's a historic tradition that fire departments do. And we hope to do that in January at some point to put this truck online. Of course, we will announce this in the community at the newsletter with newsletters as well as other things, Facebook and social media. But thank you, the 501c3, for that donation. And thank you for the board for the support of getting us a replacement vehicle for that old engine 193.
I think it's important to mention that this truck is also meets the air quality emissions standards for diesel.
Yes, it does.
And it's easier to drive. The other one had some complexities to it.
Yeah, it's an automatic. It's got all the new bells and whistles, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a good tool for us.
Very good. Any questions for Rick? Okay, let's move on to standing committee reports then. Finance.
We don't have anything to add.
Okay, operations.
Nothing to add.
Communications.
Nothing to add right now.
Okay.
Except,
We need to do that.
we've got some eager communicators here that I'm sure are going to do a better job than I could do.
I look forward for the transition and working with you on that. So learning from you and what you've done. So thank you.
All right, planning.
Nothing really beyond what was in the report, and likewise look forward to helping Chris transition to his new role.
Okay, and personnel didn't meet, so that, and then, so let's move on to the temporary advisory committee and want to give us an update?
Sure. So thank you for the feedback that we received the last time. We talked about the time of the event, and so we have sent out numerous publications now, where the scheduled time is from 3:45 to 5 p.m. on Thursday, December 28th in Red Cliff. So we have been advertising that in multiple places, and sent out newsletters, things like that. So we have, lots of registrants at this point, and continue to hopefully we'll continue to get more. And so we're very excited about the feedback that we've been getting so far. One thing that's not noted here is that we did welcome Peter onto the board this past Wednesday. And I was very happy to hear that Bertrand, I'd asked him if he wanted to continue to stay on and as a community member, and he has accepted, so he will continue to be a part of the committee. So I'm excited to continue to have, lots of people on the committee participating and providing feedback. We talked about some details in the report, but at the end of the day, right now we have a working document, like a Google Doc, basically, that we're all editing and working on as a team, because we have these subgroups that are working on the different elements. And, I've been trying to help coordinate all those pieces and coming together with basically the run a show for what we plan on going on with in a couple of weeks. And so, Rick and particularly the team here, and a lot of the data that provides some of the background information has been extraordinarily helpful. But again, the goals are really to have the community be able to come together. And, there was an earlier public comment around this. This will be an event that I hope is in the spirit of what was mentioned. And we will be able to have, background information and provide guidance and dialogue with the community over, where we are, why we are here, and what some options potentially look like in the future. That's just background is where that is. Any questions on that? Because there's one important point that I wanted to bring up in terms of your recommendation here.
Right.
And that is, as a committee, we do believe that as an event, it would be nice if we could provide some light refreshments in the way of beverages or food, hopefully both. And Vail has been really gracious in providing us the space without charge and without contract signing. So we do want to provide that food, but Vail does require that that if we were to provide that, it would be coming through their services. And so our ask is to have up to $750, given our estimation of attendees, and not necessarily everyone's going to have a full meal, but to have veggie platters, beverages, some light finger food type of thing available. We thought that would be nice to be able to have that available, and so that's why we're asking for some money out of a budget somewhere. 501c3 has money as well. The board could authorize it, I'm sure, in certain ways. But that's the idea, is that we want to be able to authorize some amount of money that I can work with Vail on and putting together some refreshments.
December 28th.
For that, December 28th, of that, correct, Chris?
Sounds reasonable.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Eric, do you have a recommended budget spot, or what would you like to see?
It's only $750.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But we don't have money budgeted for that, but it's only $750. So
Right.
Okay,
So
cool.
the
Thank you.
question is, would you like the 501c to fund that, or you think it's such a small amount that it's?
I don't think that meets the criteria of 501c3's mission statement. So I'd be leery of doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I
just have to
understand.
find it out of the magic property tax money tree that we keep shaking.
Okay.
Okay. Let us know if you can't find it.
Well, I know we don't have it, but 750, it's decimal dust on our overall budget.
Right. Okay, good. Great.
Can you-
Anything else?
Can you take a minute just to describe, how does this event, how do you do one of these things? These community hearings or
We're calling it a community forum,
Forum.
just to be clear. It's not a public hearing. It's not a board, but I'm just want to be clear. Like, it's not the five of us are not going to be sitting there hearing comments from the public and then making a decision. This is a community forum where we are, the goal is really to have, like I said, kind of 3 agenda items, really. It's background information as to historically why is the board thinking this is a thing that we should have a conversation about, and why are we here? And then providing some options of what would some structures of the fire department look like potentially in the future, and then ballparks on costs, and then how do you allocate the financing for that? And so that's really what it's going to be. And we have we're going through the run of show a little bit right now, so we'll have speakers from whoever wants to speak from the committee will be out there speaking and presenting on these topics. It's not going to be, certainly not just me up there. So we're going to have everyone who wants to
you'll be
speak.
MC essentially?
Yeah, basically, I'll give the introduction and wrap up more or less, and then everyone else will be able to give the meats, because that's how we organize ourselves into what you see in the document here is subcommittees on event planning and all those topics that I just gave you. So then that way the committee's coming together in that regard. And we're talking about having, multiple interactive opportunities. We'll have people available at tables to have specific topics if they're interested, put sticky notes on boards. We're trying to make this as interactive as possible. If you have specific ideas on how to run the show on this, please let me know. We're open to ideas, but that's kind of the idea here.
No, he cannot let you know. That would be a Brown Act violation because you've been working with Peter on it. So that's one thing I want to say. If
Fair.
any of the 3 of you
That's
wish
true.
to attend this, mum's the word. Don't say anything. Don't get up and speak. You feel free to talk to the public, but you should not speak on any of the public, get up and talk about anything. That'd be you, Chris, you, Bob, and you,
Yeah,
John.
we can work the crowd.
You can work the crowd and don't talk to Peter and don't talk to Doug about anything being presented.
We want the free food and drinks too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But just a word of caution. Yeah. So Doug, we got to
Okay,
watch
sorry.
serial meetings.
Sorry, that is the plan.
Thank you.
If you had feedback now you want to give me, you can do it now.
Absolutely.
That's what I was intending with that. That's what I meant to say. If you had feedback right now that you'd like to provide, Chris, you can provide now. But that's the gist of it.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so our last item is general. Oh, do you have something else?
LAFCO is a temporary committee that you always forget these temporary committee reports.
All right, would you like to comment on the absence of any information on LAFCO?
Would you like to report, Doug?
Yeah, no.
Can you give us a written report?
I just like to make sure that LAFCO isn't forgotten because there have been important things that we have had to talk about at LAFCO. I don't want it to be forgotten.
It isn't forgotten.
We're working on the MSA.
No,
yeah.
I keep.
No, I would say it's not forgotten by this board because in the last year, we had many conversations that would have cost this district a lot of money if we had not been proactive in how we were thinking about it. So I just don't want it to be a forgotten topic for our board, let alone the county.
Okay,
I've mentioned it to our council too. He's gonna help.
okay. Okay, anything else on LAFCO? You want to? All right, so general board discussions, opportunity to bring up items that were not on the agenda, or directions to staff. All right, Chris, I just want to welcome you again. Board, we look forward to working with you.
Likewise.
I think we need to get a new chair for our new board member.
I think that's a really good idea. All right, so the chair committee, the temporary chair committee.
There's no
I will put it in next year's budget, most certainly.
All
I
right,
saw this duct tape on my staff's chairs. You would relish that
All right.
chair.
We'll work on your chair.
I'm able to sit.
Okay, then with no further business, this meeting's adjourned and we'll see some of you in a few hours.
So you